Picture this for a second. It's 1970. Your grandpa is 28 years old. He's working at a factory, maybe an assembly line, maybe something in manufacturing. Nothing fancy. He didn't go to college. He probably didn't even finish high school, honestly. He's making about $7,800 a year. That's it. $7,800. And with that salary, that single modest blue-collar salary, he bought a 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood. He's got a car in the driveway. His wife stays home with the kids. They take a vacation every summer. Nothing crazy, maybe a road trip to the lake or a week at the beach. And here's the thing that really messes with your head. They're saving money. Like actually putting money away. Building something. Now fast forward to today. To you. You're 28. You went to college. Maybe you even have a master's degree. You're making $55,000 a year. Maybe $65,000 if you're doing pretty well. And you're sitting there in your apartment, not a house, an apartment, splitting rent with a roommate, eating rice and beans 3 times a week, checking your bank account every other day like it's going to magically grow overnight. You haven't taken a real vacation in 2 years. And savings? What savings? You've got like $2,000 in an emergency fund and you feel guilty every time you buy a coffee that costs more than $4. So here's the question that probably haunts you at 2 a.m. sometimes. What the hell happened? How did your grandpa, with no degree, no fancy job title, no side hustle, no multiple streams of income, how did he build more wealth on one salary than you can build on 2? My name is Sam, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, generational wealth, and why the financial rules that worked for our parents and grandparents seem completely broken today. Like, I genuinely lose sleep over this stuff, and the more I dig into it, the more I realize that we're not lazy. We're not bad with money. We're not doing it wrong. We're playing a completely different game with the same old rulebook, and that's why we keep losing. Today, I want to show you something that changed how I see everything about money, work, and wealth. It's called the inflation trap, and once you understand it, you'll never look at your paycheck the same way again. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with the obvious. People love to say, well, salaries have gone up since 1970, so what's the problem? And technically, yeah, they're right. Salaries have gone up. In 1970, the median household income was about $9,870. Today, it's around $74,000. That's like a 650% increase. Sounds amazing, right? But here's where it gets ugly. The cost of a house in 1970? About $23,000. Today, the median home price is over $400,000. That's a 1,640% increase. The cost of a new car in 1970? Around $3,500. Today, over $48,000. That's a 1,270% increase. College tuition in 1970? About $400 per year for a public university. Today, over $10,000 per year. That's a 2,400% increase. You see what's happening here? Your salary went up 650%, but houses went up 1,640%. Cars went up 1,270%. Education went up 2,400%. Healthcare, don't even get me started on healthcare, has gone up something like 3,000%. So yeah, you're making more money than your grandpa. Congratulations. But your money buys less of everything that actually matters. This is the inflation trap. And it's not just about prices going up. It's about the fact that the things you need to build a middle-class life, housing, transportation, education, healthcare, have inflated at 2, 3, sometimes 5 times the rate of your income. Your grandpa could buy a house for about 2.5 times his annual salary. You need to make about 6 times your annual salary to buy that same house today. In some cities, it's 10 times. In places like San Francisco or New York, it's literally 15 times. The math doesn't work anymore, and no amount of cutting out lattes is going to fix that. All right, here's where we need to get a little nerdy for a second. But stay with me because this is important. There's a difference between nominal wages and real wages. And most people, including most news reporters and politicians, either don't understand this or deliberately ignore it. Nominal wages are just the number on your paycheck, the raw dollar amount. And yeah, nominal wages have gone up over time. But real wages are what your paycheck can actually buy after you account for inflation. And here's the brutal truth. Real wages for the average American worker have been basically flat since the 1970s. Let me say that again. Adjusted for inflation, the average worker today has roughly the same purchasing power as the average worker 50 years ago. But wait, didn't we just talk about how everything costs way more? Yes. Yes, we did. So how does that work? How can real wages be flat while real costs have exploded? The answer is that the official inflation calculation is, well, let's just say it's generous. The Consumer Price Index, the thing the government uses to measure inflation, weighs certain things more heavily than others, and it doesn't always capture the true cost increases in housing, healthcare, and education the way you experience them in real life. So on paper, inflation looks manageable, but in your wallet, in your actual lived experience, it feels like you're drowning. Your grandpa didn't have to think about this stuff. A dollar was a dollar. It bought what it bought, and what it bought was a pretty decent life. You're doing the same work, probably more work, honestly, and getting a fraction of the outcome. That's not a personal failure. That's a systemic shift. Okay, I need to talk about housing specifically because this is where the generational wealth gap gets really, really ugly. In 1970, the average home cost about 2.5 times the average annual income. A family making $10,000 could buy a $25,000 house. That math worked. Today, the average home costs about 7 to 8 times the average annual income, and that's the national average. In major cities where the jobs actually are, it's way worse. But here's the part that really stings. Your grandpa bought that house in 1970 for $25,000. That same house today, it's worth $450,000, maybe more. So your grandpa didn't just buy a place to live. He bought an asset that appreciated by 1,700% over his lifetime. He built wealth by accident, just by existing, just by buying a house when houses were affordable. You're paying $2,000 a month in rent, which builds zero equity, by the way, saving up for a down payment that keeps getting further away because home prices keep rising faster than you can save. Every year you don't own a home, you fall further behind. Not because you're bad with money, but because the ladder got pulled up behind the previous generation. And this creates a compounding problem. Your grandpa had a paid-off house by the time he was 50, no mortgage payment. That freed up hundreds of dollars a month, which back then was a lot, to invest, to save, to help his kids with college or a down payment. You might not pay off your house until you're 60 or 70. If you ever buy one at all, that's decades of wealth building that just disappears. Here's something that should make you angry, honestly. In 1970, most households had one income. Dad worked, mom stayed home, and one income was enough. Today, most households have two incomes. Both partners work full-time jobs. And somehow, two incomes today provide roughly the same standard of living as one income did 50 years ago. Think about that. We doubled the labor input and got the same output. Elizabeth Warren, before she was a senator, wrote a whole book about this called The Two-Income Trap. And her argument is fascinating. She says that when women entered the workforce en masse, which is a good thing to be clear, it essentially doubled the bidding power for housing, for good school districts, for all the things families compete for. So prices rose to absorb that extra income. The result? Two incomes became necessary just to maintain what one income used to provide. It's like a treadmill that speeds up every time you try to run faster. And here's the cruel irony. With two people working, you now have two sets of commuting costs, two professional wardrobes, childcare expenses, which are insane now, more eating out because nobody has time to cook. The list goes on. Your grandparents had more time and more money. You have less of both, and you're working twice as hard. Let's talk about college for a second, because this one is personal for a lot of us. Your grandpa probably didn't go to college, and if he did, it cost almost nothing. In 1970, you could pay for a year of public university by working a summer job. Literally, a few months of minimum wage work covered tuition. Today, a summer job might cover your textbooks. Maybe. The average college graduate now leaves school with about $30,000 in debt. Many have much more. And we were told this was an investment. Go to college, get a good job, build a better life. But here's what they didn't tell us. While tuition was exploding, the wage premium for having a degree was shrinking. More people got degrees, so degrees became less valuable. Supply and demand. Basic economics. So now you've got an entire generation that went into debt for credentials that don't pay off the way they used to. You start your adult life already in a hole. Your grandpa started his at zero. That's a massive head start he didn't even realize he had. And by the way, all those years you spent in college, he spent working, earning, saving, compounding. While you were accumulating debt, he was accumulating assets. Okay, here's the one that really keeps me up at night. Since 1970, worker productivity in America has gone up by about 60%. We produce way more per hour of work than we used to. Technology, automation, better processes, we're more efficient than ever. But wages have stayed flat in real terms. So where did all that extra productivity go? I'll give you one guess. It went to the top. Corporate profits have skyrocketed. Executive compensation has exploded. Shareholder returns have gone through the roof. But the actual workers who created all that extra value, they got nothing. Your grandpa worked hard and got paid fairly for it. You work harder, produce more, and get paid. The same adjusted for inflation. Actually, probably less once you factor in the real cost increases in housing and healthcare. This isn't about working harder. The game is rigged. The rules changed when nobody was looking. Look, I don't want to just leave you depressed. That's not helpful. Yeah, the system is broken. Yeah, the deck is stacked against you, but that doesn't mean you're helpless. Here's the thing I've realized after obsessing over this stuff for years. You can't win the old game anymore. The house, car, pension, retirement path that worked for your grandparents, that door is mostly closed, but new doors have opened. First, you have to accept that building wealth today requires different strategies. Your grandpa could just show up, work 40 years, and end up okay. You can't rely on that. You need to be more intentional, more strategic, invest early and consistently, even small amounts. The stock market has historically returned about 7 to 10% annually after inflation. Your grandpa didn't have easy access to index funds and apps that let you invest with $5. You do. Use that. Build skills, not just credentials. Another degree won't save you, but becoming genuinely valuable in a specific area can. The people who are thriving today are specialists, not generalists. Consider geographic arbitrage. Maybe you can't afford San Francisco, but you can build a great life in a smaller city with a lower cost of living. Remote work has made this more possible than ever. Create assets, not just income. Whether it's a side business, content, investments, or something else, focus on things that generate money while you sleep. That's how wealth compounds. And finally, don't compare yourself to your grandparents. Different era, different rules, different game. Comparing your progress to theirs is like comparing apples to spaceships. Here's what I want you to take away from all of this. You're not failing. The system changed. The rules that built the middle class in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s have been systematically dismantled over the past 50 years. Housing became an investment vehicle instead of shelter. Education became a debt trap instead of an opportunity. Healthcare became a for-profit industry instead of a public good. Your grandpa wasn't smarter than you. He wasn't more hardworking. He wasn't better with money. He was just playing a different game, a game that was, frankly, much easier to win. The inflation trap isn't your fault, but understanding it is your responsibility. Because once you see it, once you really get it, you can stop blaming yourself and start building strategies that actually work in today's reality. You're not going to build wealth the way your grandpa did. That path is gone. But you can build wealth in ways he never could have imagined. You have access to information, to global markets, to tools and platforms that didn't exist until recently. The old American dream is dead, but maybe, just maybe, we can build a new one. One that acknowledges how things actually work now. One that doesn't gaslight you into thinking you're the problem. You're not the problem. And now that you know that, you can start finding real solutions. I'll see you in the next one.